So, what you're seeing over here is a video of the Rebbe on Sukkot, and he's bringing in his Hoshainot. There's also a Lulav and Esrig over there. As you might see, people holding here. This is the Hoshainot, which is something that we do in Sukkot. But today's class, we will focus more on the four species. Now, I mentioned I started the class with. So first, we can't forget the tradition of making a bracha on the coffee. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'dvarai. There are so many beautiful thoughts that can be shared with regards to Sukkot and the four species that we do on Sukkot, the upcoming holiday where we all go outside of the comforts of our home and we sit down in a sukkah. And I want to mention, I might have mentioned this last year, I don't know, but since it's a very, very beautiful thought, I want to mention it again this year, based on what the Medrash says. The four species that we take in the Lulav and Esrog, I don't have a Lulav right here, my Lulav is at home. Excuse me. But I want to discuss the famous message and beyond, a little bit more than that, which is the reason why we take the four species. Okay. Now, before I get to that, just a little Brooklyn anecdote versus South Florida. I spoke about the hottest sukkah and the coldest sukkah. So I had the merit for many years, of course, to grow up in Brooklyn. And I remember one year that it actually snowed on Sukkot. It was snow flurries, but the sukkah was covered with snow. I know those who live in Canada have mentioned that sometimes they actually really have snow on Sukkot. Here in South Florida, especially this year, because Sukkot is relatively earlier in terms of summer, it's going to be a hot Sukkot. It's become quite acceptable in certain Sukkot that we install ACs in the Sukkah. Just a suggestion if you want to invest in having a more comfortable Sukkah. But that's neither here nor there. One thing I could assure you, that in the desert where the Jews traveled, there was no AC, although it does say that the clouds of glory, which is part of the reason, one of the main reasons why we sit in the Sukkah, to remind us of the clouds of glory that God protected us when we went out of Egypt. The temperature was regulated. It protected the Jews when they traveled in the desert from excessive heat and scorpions and bugs and mosquitoes, etc., so that they had a very comfortable experience while they were traveling in the desert. So perhaps on that note, it is totally okay for us to have AC here in South Florida as to replicate the conditions of the sukkah that they had in the desert. Okay, now, so first let's talk about, there's two messages I want to share today. One message is about the four species, and the opening video, just to share a little memory, the opening video I showed you was about the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Rebbe, and the Hoshainot, and Lulav and Esrog. There's a video here also about the Rebbe doing Lulav and Esrog. Let's see if we could find it over here. Let's see if I can bring it up here on YouTube. I don't see it. Let's see. I don't see it. Let's see. Okay, whatever. Maybe. Hold on. Here you have it. Here you can see. Let me just show it to you for just a quick moment, so you can see the beautiful Esrog that the Rebbe had. I'm going to reverse this and just play this video for just a moment. Here you see a wonderful, beautiful Lulav surrounded with many, many hadassim. Let me go back a little bit here. Here we go. There you see. There you can see the beautiful Lulav. And that's that. Okay, so let's go back here to the thought. Now, as you might know, the Lulav and Esrog, and there's four species that come together. There's the Lulav, which is the palm tree, the palm branch. There is the etrog, the citrus fruit. There is the hadassim. There is the myrtle branches, and there are the willow branches. And now, how do we get these four species? There's a verse in the Torah that says, "Lakachtam lachem," you should take for yourself, pri eitz hadar, kapes tamarim, And there's the verse, and like every single mitzvah, be it mezuzah, be it tefillin, be it whatever mitzvah it is all expounded upon in the oral Torah and the Talmud. And the rabbis learn from this verse specifically these four species: the lulav, the etrog, the hadas, and the myrtle branch. Now, so the hadas and the willow. The Medrash says something very beautiful. The Medrash says that, and by the way, I'm jumping here a little bit. The part of the memory of the Rebbe's lulav and esrog, because it's been a tradition by Hasidim throughout the years that you wanted to, since this is such a beautiful and special mitzvah for various reasons, we would try to bless, to make the actual blessing. Even though we had our own lulav and esrog, we would try to make our own blessing on the Rebbe's lulav and esrog. The Rebbe would give out the lulav and esrog of his for hours. We would basically be up all night Sukkot, dancing and joyous and so on. In the morning, we would get online like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and wait for hours so that we could make the blessing and the lulav and esrog on the Rebbe's lulav and esrog. So that was a very, very special memory that we had, and I'm sharing that. And then is the reason of these four species. So the Medrash says the following thought, which is a very beautiful thought, that the etrog, the citrus fruit, which both taste, because it's a food, tastes good, and it has a very pleasant odor, represents an individual that excels both in study of Torah, because Torah, the prophet says, is compared to food because you ingest it and you grow from it spiritually. So it says the expression is used, v'toratcha, and your Torah, God's Torah, betoch me'ai, is within my innards. And mitzvos, good deeds, is compared to a good fragrance, because somebody who has good deeds, someone who excels in good deeds between him and God and between him and fellow man, represents somebody who has a pleasant spiritual fragrance. So the etrog represents the individual who excels both in Torah study and as well in fulfillment of the commandments. The lulav, which is the palm tree, represents the date, which is a food, but doesn't necessarily have a good odor, a good smell, a good fragrance. That represents the individual who excels in Torah, because it's a food. And again, we said Torah is compared to food, but there's not necessarily any special fragrance, because he doesn't necessarily excel in the fulfillment of the commandments, of mitzvot, of God's commandments. The hadas, the myrtle, which is the other species that we bring together, the little branch, the myrtle branch, that has a pleasant smell. In fact, it is sometimes used for that purpose. It has a very pleasant smell, and that is, but it's not a food. So that represents the individual that excels in fulfillment of mitzvahs, God's commandments, but not necessarily in, is he a scholar, or does he excel, or is he dedicated to the study of Torah, which is more compared to food. And then we have the willow branch, which is not a food and has no real special fragrance. That represents the individual that doesn't excel in neither. So the four species represent all different kind of people, the ones that excel the most, and the ones who are unfortunately not excelling not in Torah, and not in deeds, not in mitzvahs. Nevertheless, in order to fulfill the mitzvah that God commanded us to take on Sukkot, these four species, you must take them all as one, representing two ideas. One idea that is subdivided into two, which is Jewish unity of mankind in general, people who excel and are on the top, on people who are, for whatever reason, are on the bottom. You could only fulfill the mitzvah if you say, you know what, I'm going to fulfill the commandment by taking the etrog, the most beautiful esrog. I will take an etrog that cost $1,000, and they do exist. A perfect esrog could cost probably up to $1,000, because the Torah uses by the etrog the expression, you should take a beautiful fruit. So throughout history, those who can and could afford have looked for the beautiful fruit, and believe it or not, a perfect etrog, which means the shape is perfect, the cleanliness is perfect, the bumps are perfect. It has a little bit of a what they call a gartel, a little bit of a mid sort of circle, the way the top and the bottom. A perfect esrog, clean esrog, can cost up to $1,000, maybe more. The perfect esrog, all the details. And there are those who are meticulous to get that perfect esrog. So if a person says, I will get the most beautiful esrog, and I'll pick it up and I'll say the blessing, Al Netilat Lulav, has not fulfilled the mitzvah at all. Not he hasn't fulfilled the complete, he has nothing. He hasn't fulfilled his obligation where God says to him, this is the mitzvah. You only fulfill the mitzvah when you take all four species, representing the fact that only by uniting and coming together all as one can we fulfill God's will on this holiday to do this very special mitzvah. And this is a very, very important and wonderful lesson. In other words, maybe to take it even a step further, on the simple, and I don't mean simple, I mean on the more basic level, this in itself is a wonderful message. Unity represents that you come together we're all one, we're all God's children. We all have a purpose. We all have meaning. We all are in essence in our core. We all come from one place, and we all need to. And in today's environment, this message is so vital, where you could have differences of opinion, and yet at the same time you could come together as one. You could have people who are on the top, people who excel in all areas, and people on the bottom, but together is only the time and the way you could do the mitzvah. That's message number one. And also because each one could learn from the other. And what I mean by that is to just take the two extreme examples. Obviously the willow individual, the simple individual, could learn from the etrog individual because he's a scholar and he excels and so on. The willow individual can also bring a certain sense of humility that the etrog individually needs. Because he's a scholar, because he's on the top, and because he's so capable and so good and so wonderful and so fine, it definitely could lead to a certain arrogance, a certain dismissiveness of the people who are not in his caliber or her caliber. And there's also a certain simplicity that the person who's maybe not so knowledgeable and not so philosophical, scholarly, when you break through to the willow individual and you get him to do something or her to do something, there's a certain simplicity and there's a certain sort of submission to a higher authority, to God Almighty, to the Supreme Being, that maybe the more scholarly individual who understands and appreciates it doesn't have. So there's a humility, simplicity, and acceptance of sort of yoke, like a servant, that the willow individual brings and can teach even the etrog individual. So that's one very important lesson from the four species that we need to take and we should take based on the Medrash. But I want to also share another thought, and this is a thought that I haven't seen anywhere else. This is my own thought, so you could take it or leave it. It's an idea that I thought a little bit about, and I want to share it. And take it or leave it. You could like it, you dismiss it. It's something that comes from the holy sources, from the Talmud, from the Medrash, from holy commentaries. It's true, and it's absolute true, whether we understand it, appreciate it or not. If we don't understand it, we don't understand it. The shortcoming is within us. But if it's something that we on our own come up with an idea, then you could take it, you could leave it. And I was sitting in the Sukkah a couple of years ago, and I was thinking about the two mitzvahs that we do on Sukkot. The two mitzvahs we do on Sukkot is sitting in the Sukkah, and on the other hand, which has its own messages, and on the other hand, we do the lulav and etrog, which is the two mitzvot that are unique for this time of the year as we begin to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot tomorrow night. And I thought about the theme of these two mitzvot, which is like this: the the lulav represents the details in a sense of Judaism. You have to make sure that you get a kosher etrog. If it has a hole, it's not kosher. If it has if it's dry, parts of it are cut off, whatever. It's like every mitzvah has a lot of the details to make sure that it is kosher. The same thing is with the willow branch and the myrtle and the lulav. There's a lot of details to make it kosher. And I would say that represents a lot of the rules and the laws and the details of Judaism. The Sukkah, on the other hand, represents the more encompassing elements of Judaism. You know, the nice cultural element. I'm not saying it's the only thing the Sukkah represents. I want to make that clear. But to some extent, the Sukkah is you're sitting in the Sukkah, you're having a good time, you have family there, everybody's enjoying. It represents the more expansive and beauty aspects of Judaism, what we might call the fun parts, the cultural parts. It's nice. Family comes together. We sit and we have a wonderful time in the sukkah. We have a joyous meal and we sing and it's wonderful. Now there are some people who are very, very focused on the details of Judaism, almost to a fault, maybe even to an OCD level. And in the more healthier environment is because they are truly God-fearing Jews and they want to do it right. But that becomes their focus, and sometimes even to an extent that they might be overburdening both themselves and their kids. This is a fine line, but let's make the point here till we're done with this thought. On the other hand, especially American Jews, it's very common, and this is something that you'll find beyond sort of just Jews, human beings in general, but this is a Jewish holiday. On the other hand, you have many, many Jews who do not at all want to be bothered with the details of Judaism, with the specifics of Judaism, with the limitations that are perceived about Judaism. It's too much. It's too burdensome. They are totally okay with the happy aspects of Judaism. I'll eat latkes, and I'll have gefilte fish and sushi, and I'll come together for Hava Nagila, for a bar mitzvah. The happy, cultural, beautiful parts of Judaism, they're totally okay with. Comes this holiday and says that one without the other cannot be, and not only can it not be, it cannot really be truly appreciated. What I mean by that is like this. You cannot really appreciate sort of the cultural, meaning the general joyous elements of Judaism, if you don't truly believe that this is passed down from Moses at Mount Sinai. And every aspect of Judaism, the difficult aspects, the detailed aspects, are real and true and godly, then that is when you truly appreciate the cultural or the more expansive, general, sort of fun part, traditional parts of Judaism. Otherwise, it's just not the same. An individual who is truly tuned in with the details and appreciates the true source and godly Torah root of Judaism and lives his life that way or her life that way, then appreciates and is joyous about the more general, what I call sort of more encompassing, more sort of fun parts, more family oriented, but whatever, the different words you want to use, is a lot more real and appreciated and deep when you have the lulav aspect, and vice versa. You must introduce the joy and the somewhat broader element of Judaism and relationship to God into also the details. Otherwise, you could almost become a miserable individual by being so obsessed with the details, which you need to be. I don't know if obsessed is the right word. You need to be careful with the details if that's a mandate of the Torah. You need to be careful with those details. So the holiday of Sukkot, when we take the lulav and esrog, and we sit in the sukkah, bring the two together to highlight that they go hand in hand. Each one is beautiful and enhanced and more real and more true and more authentic when you have them both and they complement each other. So What is that practical message over here? A very important message, because again, here, especially here in the United States of America, where we are resentful of being told what to do, no matter who it comes from, even if it comes from our Creator who gave us life today and health. You need to focus on these two things and ask yourself, okay, what am I going to do? If I'm an individual that focuses more on the expansive parts of Judaism, and I'm not interested in the details and the laws. Does God really care if I put on my tefillin like this or like that, or if I eat this food or that food? No. You should make a resolution to focus on those aspects and those elements of our heritage and tradition and our relationship with God. And vice versa, for those who are very meticulous in that and are almost non-tolerant to those who are not in line with their total focus, we need to encompass the Sukkah. And that would be a tremendous resolution, which is why this is not the most joyous holiday. Why is this the most joyous holiday? Because if you could incorporate the lulav and the Sukkah together, then you're a wholesome person. And your relationship with God is wholesome. Your relationship with your family will be wholesome. Your relationship with your community will be wholesome. And you will truly, truly be able to re-energize with joy, which is what this holiday is about. It's called Zman Simchatenu, because it's the time of the year where, in this month, which is called the month where we satiate our souls, we recharge our souls with various elements that our souls needs, various spiritual connectivities. So this is the holiday that's coming up, is the holiday of joy. When you're wholesome and you're connected in a healthy, complete, true, authentic, genuine way, that's when you're a wholesome human being, a wholesome family, a wholesome community, a wholesome society, where you give light to those around you, etc. So on that note, we have a beautiful Sukkah here at Chabad Coral Springs. Everybody's welcome. There are different events that we publicize, but at any time you want to come, make a blessing in the Sukkah with a lulav and esrog, a piece of cake, make a bracha le'Shabbat Sukkah, you are absolutely welcome. We're going to have some Torah over here. We're going to have Shmini Atzeres over here. So we hope to see you sometime in the next week. Please both come, share these words of Torah that we've just shared over here. It's a wonderful, wonderful holiday. It comes after Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah are the days which are more solemn, where we ask God to give us a blessed year. After Yom Kippur, we are assured and we have faith and trust that Hashem granted us a wonderful year, and that also brings about the joy of Sukkot, where we are joyous that God certainly heard all our prayers individually and collectively to grant us all a wonderful, healthy, and blessed new year. Everybody have a fantastic week. Any questions on Sukkot, please reach out to us. We also have a food distribution going on right now. Please come over and get some food. Thank you for listening.